But we have done one.
Oh, yeah, which one?
Well, it wasn't one, it's not like that. It was this, like, invented by, not invented, like, just created by this group of people that do a haunted house for charity every year. And they essentially did sort of a live D&D. So it wasn't like battles, there wasn't any, you know, talking or anything like that.
So here's an example of a LARP that I played in. It's called the Tribunal, and it's 12 people. And one person is the coordinator, and they are specifically an unnamed military leader. I don't even think he actually gave a rank. He just addressed us as soldiers, and told us that in this fictional country that was never named, we were members of a unit, and we were supposed to be guarding supplies in a time of great shortage and famine. And someone had stolen a loaf of bread from the kitchen in the barrack. And us 12 soldiers knew who was actually guilty. And the tribunal was at dawn, and we knew that the person who had been arrested was going to be executed after the trial. So it was pretty obvious that the verdict was a foregone conclusion. Some of us, we were all given a piece of paper that told us name, disposition, persona, attitude, and whether we thought the person was guilty or not. And if we thought the person was not guilty, maybe it's because we were actually guilty of it ourselves, or we knew who had done it. And that was it. Those were the rules. Those were the parameters. And then he left and closed the door. And then he came back periodically to tell us how much time was remaining. But effectively, the tribunal was not a part of that law, in the sense that we would never participate in the tribunal or know its outcome. We were just supposed to interact with one another for 1 hour before the tribunal. And that was the entire structure. That was the whole thing. So literally, we broke into arguments. People snuck off to talk to each other. You know, I saw him. I'm telling you, I saw him in the rain. And then, of course, somebody comes in and says, well, why were you at your post? And it just kept snowballing into screaming matches, arguments, conspiracy, apologies. And at the end, one by one, he took us out for the questioning phase. And nobody knew what was happening. Of course, we all just sat in the room and waited, because one by one we were taken out of the room, and I was like third or fourth. And I went outside, and I'm like crazy, and I blamed one of the people who my character had developed a dislike for. Actually, this guy, but my character and his character were cat and dog, so I blamed him, and insisted that he was guilty. And then later, the guy who created it edited the whole thing into a 5-minute video. And we got to see everybody's confession. Of course, it was a bunch of people sitting down, and we're all watching them like, son of a bitch. This guy, you know? And then after we had the what do you call a debrief, where we also would sit around out of character and just talk about what happened and so forth. So that's kind of a traditional, or non-traditional, maybe typical web experience for me,
Okay.
right? No costume, no physical interaction at all, and very, very loosely defined. There are others where you have structure in the sense that, okay, after 30 minutes we change the setting, and we fast forward 2 years, 2 years later, right? Or, now we're going to, your character's going to die, and you're coming back as a different person, so you're going to put on, this hat or whatever to identify yourself as a new character. But it's not necessarily about, there's also, LARP battles, I'm sure you've heard of, where people are over full weapons. And that's a completely different kind of experience that I actually don't know anything about, unfortunately, other than I've seen movies and stuff.
Not like that really either.
Yeah, most of the LARP that I've encountered has been more or less free-form, interactive. Just improv.
So there's like one really solid scenario that everybody has to function in.
Most of the time, the scenario and the characteristics, if not actions, the characteristics of each character are sketched out very loosely to give you more flexibility.
By the game maker.
Whoever creates the game, yeah.
Have you ever played any of the Shifting Forest LARPs? We thought we were going to maybe do one of those because they're free.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds cool.
They've just got a bunch of text for one, and then there's like director text in it. So, like, if you don't want to know too much, you just don't read that part.
Right.
They have a Hamlet one. I'm going to just name them, and maybe you've accidentally played one. A Little Magic, Garden Station 4, All Saints Eve, The Mirror Room. I've seen a lot of people talk about The Mirror Room. Argentine, Snow White, the 1st of December,
So they basically publish
Queen of Spades, yes, and Eridanus Rising, no?
Sounds really neat. I don't know any of this,
Where do you get your games from? Are they published books, or do you all make them up together?
I I've designed a couple, and then, you know, I just know people who create LARPs. And then I go to like NerdCons and we play LARPs together. Yeah.
And when you design a LARP, what's involved in that? What?
Actually, the one that I did was digital, which was kind of weird because so many people now.
Live action digital.
Right. It's a bizarre concept, but a lot of the people that I hang out with live in other countries or outside of the U.S. We don't get to hang out in person unless we go to the annual Gen Con like once a year. So a lot of tabletop gaming is done via Google Hangouts these days. Because Skype doesn't let you do multiple cameras at the same time. You can't have like 5 different people playing and see each other, read each other. Skype, but Google Hangouts does. There's like this huge nerd community on Google Plus, and so we get together and video chat Dungeons and Dragons together. And I got to thinking, and I said, you know, D&D and games of the type are fantastic, but with the character sheets and the dice and keeping track of hit points, it's a lot easier when there's a bunch of people around the table with beer and whatnot. But when you're just face to face on the video screen, it's a lot harder to stay focused. And I got to thinking, what about doing a LARP that way? No dice, you know, limited character sheets, and it's all about choices. And so in the LARP that I did, you have a series of problems that only the other people involved can solve. You can't solve your own crisis, whatever it is. And you have a limited number of opportunities to help other people. So you have to pick and choose who you're actually going to help. And you tell them, you know, yeah, here's a solution I can offer you to this life-threatening crisis, but you know, I don't know if it'll work. And then afterwards, you have to decide if you succeed or fail. But along the way, you also learn to dislike certain other characters because everybody's keeping secrets from each other. And in some cases, you form alliances only to discover someone has betrayed you. And so there's this constant pressure to decide who do you want to help, who you find out later that you've got a knife in your back to this person. So it's about trust. And it's about, you know, uncertainty, which is a lot easier to do, of course, when you're not even in the same room as some people. The pressure can feel very tangible and real. That's the only LARP that I've successfully, you know, finished, designed, and published. And it's okay. It's done really well.
And what's the name of it?
Uscreen. Because it's all
Uscreen?
You know, Uscreen, one word. Yeah. Because it's basic. Here's where it gets really neat. You're on the spaceship. You're all like members of the starship. And so you communicate, you're all on the starship, and it's you know, there's quantum flux, and the hull's damaged, and there's oxygen, you know, contamination. So you're all communicating on various parts of this ship with Uscreens. So you've got Picard over here, and you've got Crusher over there, you know, and you're all yelling at each other.
No, you
right?
do this.
I've got quantum flux over here, you know, I'm trapped in the brig, you know, and somebody's like, all right, I'm going to see if I can, you know, reroute the cortical harness. No, it didn't work. And you're like, yeah, you cross that off, and you're like, all right, I'm one step closer to dying. If I don't get all this dealt with, I won't get to the escape pod without dying. So you wind up with some really intense, you know, scenes of people just chewing the hell out of that scene. Full of shit. But, you know, that's just example. But the core mechanic is the part that I think is noteworthy in the sense that you have a limited number of opportunities to do a thing, and you have to decide success or failure on the spot based on how you feel. And what's interesting is that people really resent it. You know? Right? I mean, there's actually a sincere feeling of disappointment when somebody's like, and you failed, and you're like, why me?
It's like it bleeds over.
Well, bleed is the term. Are you quoting the word bleed, or is it just?
No, it's a word we've been using in this process because we were like talking about people who exist in a fiction and then in another fiction and then us. So
That's terrific.
That's all our plays are like that.
So Nordic LARP is where a lot of crazy stuff is happening. Yeah, bleed is real for them. Like they chase, quote, chase the bleed, which is to say they try to find situations where you actually feel. I mean, some of this stuff is kind of Stanford prison experiment in the sense that, like, there was one LARP in, I want to say Sweden, might have been Norway, where they actually built cages and put people in them as part of their LARP, and they went Stanford prison experiment. People lived in these, you know, these like mesh cages that they built out of chicken wire to pursue that bleed, to really feel it, you know. And so that's great. I mean,
Wow.
I'm not.
Chase the bleed.
Can you talk about
I like that.
the actual rules inside of the LARP? Like, you talk when this happens. You don't ever talk like this. If you have a question outside the game, like how do people function inside the game?
Excellent question. So in my, because there's a chat window inside all the video programs, if you have a question, you type it in the chat window. You never break character, ever. Right? So your character remains, you know, you remain as a player in character at all times. As for when you can speak, the characters are free to interrupt and speak whenever they're in a scene. But at the end of every scene, there's one character who's the bridge. Right? In my game. There's one character who plays engineering, another plays medical, right? So they're all named after officers on Star Trek. And one who coordinates when you're allowed to speak. So bridge to engineering can then get with the bridge. Well, hold on, we got medical, they need help, they got some kind of, and then the bridge leaves. And then only when the scene between those two characters has been concluded in some way. Only when it's
Between
resolved.
which two characters?
Between
Bridge
So
and anyone?
when medical and engineering are done, you know, and bridge ducks out.
Oh.
It's just like, all right, bridge, you know, medical needs your help.
Okay.
You know, so engineering talk to medical, you guys figure it out, you know, bridge out. And then bridge hits the mute button and the video off button. He can still hear and see, but they can't see or hear him or her. And so the bridge character goes dark. Well, the other two deal with it. When they're done, then they sign off. Bridge comes back on and decides who the other two people need to be in the scene, unless somebody else signs on first. It's like, Bridge, you know, this is weapons. I need to talk to a medical. You know, okay, medical workers. And so the bridge is basically the person who coordinates who gets to speak at what time and when. But in Tribunal, the other freeform LARP that I did, it was everybody for themselves, and there were no out of character moments. Basically, you had to stay in character, and there really weren't any rules to govern interaction because it was a freeform. So there was no point at which you say, well, do the rules allow me to do this? There are no rules to govern your actions. It's just an experience, right? The only rule is you have to stop talking after 1 hour. Or if the person who's the commanding officer comes in, you must do what they tell them. And he would introduce a new rule, like, all right, now we're leaving 1 by 1, and you're coming out. So there's no ambiguity about it. So there's no need for rules. Now there are other LARPs. For example, the Vampire the Masquerade LARP apparently just has rules for rule LARP. You carry your tarot cards in your pocket. One person is a rules master. They tell you if you were successful in hypnotizing somebody with your vampire powers. Or, you know, I've never done it because I tend to shy away from a lot of rules heavy experiences. Anything that's rules heavy, I tend to back away from things that rules light. You can shoot the scene.
That game's been around for a long time.
Yeah, it was definitely one of the first. But it's, you know, a lot of the groundbreaking, interesting things are coming out. Like I said, I have the Nordic LARP, and then Jeep Form is another one. I don't even know why they call it Jeep Form. It's Jeed, and I don't think it stands for anything. Maybe it's because there's a Swedish word that sounds like the American word Jeep. I don't remember. I can't remember why they call it Jeep Form. But anyhow, it is an extreme form of free form LARPing. And it's very avant-garde. I think it's called Crazy About the Boy.
Oh, yeah, I heard that.
Okay, you do that. Okay, great. Right. Yeah, so yeah, there's one man, and then the other characters all played by women. And he's what, one of the last men on earth or something along those lines? I don't recall.
Something like that.
And gender politics and sexuality and all of that are wrapped up into it. And I know a bunch of people who did a version of that here in the U.S. and it's kind of an event. Somebody who went to Norway or flew to Norway to do it. It's a big deal. But do you guys know Fiasco?
No.
So that's an interesting, I'm sorry, I'm just going to sit here and talk about role playing games.
Yeah.
All right, last Fiasco's kind of interesting. The dude who designed it lives in Europe. He's a really cool cat. You might want to talk to him. He designs LARPs. He designed, I think he designed the Tribunal. If not, he designed one of the other ones. Fiasco is a story game. So it's a role-playing game, but it's not, you know, very few role-playing games are actually like D&D in the sense that, like, you know, there aren't that many that are fantasy-based. I mean, there are tons of games like Fiasco, which is inspired by Coen Brothers movies. So if you've seen A Simple Plan, Fargo, Simple Plan is actually Coen Brothers, but that's an example of a movie, which is effectively a fiasco. People with lots of ambition and very little impulse control. Chaos ensues. So this guy's core premise is we're all sitting around a table, you know, we don't really use dice very often, you only roll the dice like once in 20 minutes. Really what it comes down to is decision making in the heat of the moment. And really it looks a lot like this. You've got little note cards and pieces of paper that sort of tell you your character's name, what is it your character desires, where are you? And of course, it's not orcs and trolls, it's, you know, Cleophas, his daddy's shotgun, Chicken Shack, the beautiful waitress. Go. You know, and somebody finds a suitcase with $20,000. Right? This is a powder keg, right? Something bad is going to happen. Right? And that's what the game is about, right? So yeah, I've
And this is an online game or
so Fiasco is a tabletop.
a tabletop?
Yeah, you buy a little book, it gives you all the rules, and then you get things that are called play sets. And a play set is a series of lists that you choose from when you start your game. So you say, okay, which play set are we going to use? Like I designed a play set, predictably set in outer space, but the premise is that all the heroes aboard the space station saw that this white hole, this dimensional anomaly was expanding, and they were like, screw it, and they left on these emergency ships. So all the people left on board the space station are the criminals in the brig, the aliens that nobody likes, like the drunken Klingon, or the gambling, like Ferengi or whatever, like they're all sitting around and they're just like, hey, what's going on? And so all the losers are stuck on board the space station, and they have to figure out what to do. And of course, it's a fiasco, right? They all have, there's like one escape pod, and they're all fighting to get on it, and they all hate each other. Go, right? And so the playset tells you, like, who are the characters, what are their relationships, because that's crucial, right?
Right.
If the person sitting to your right is your brother that you don't like, and the person sitting to your left is your immediate superior, right? The officer who outranks you and makes your life miserable, and you have to choose who you're going to hurt first. You really got to think it over, right? Because it's funny either way. And then you have to choose like one of the items. And the items, of course, are everywhere. Because in the same way that Fargo, you throw that wood chipper, that something bad's going to happen. So what was it that the old adage that if there is Henry Gibson, right? If there's a pistol above the fireplace in Act 1, somebody's going to have to shoot it by the end. Right, so that's what these items are, right? That's critical. What are the things that will serve as the instruments of destruction or enlightenment or whatever else? What are the climactic elements that will be shared and interacted before the conclusion? Get a movie. If you have an introductory sequence where it's demonstrating that Superman has a vulnerability to kryptonite, clearly it's going to be a factor in the narration before it's all over. It's crucial.
So, we have 20 minutes, not 4 hours. This fictional LARP needs to be something that is just something they enjoy and can play indefinitely. And one of the characters might die, but okay, that character's dead, but you can come back as somebody else. So that the game, ideally, is kind of just a never-ending thing that they'll just continue to play for their whole lives, and then something terrible happens and it breaks the world. So that's what we're thinking right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you can help us go like, okay, what would break the world when it's not designed to have that ending that, like you were saying, like the objects that are the means of destruction, like how is this world coming down? Like we need that, but we don't, I guess, inside the fiction of it, they would, there's 2 levels of fiction.
Sure.
Inside the levels of the LARPers fiction, they would never anticipate that they're going to end the game. They're just going to end the game for the night and come back in a long D&D kind of way and not in a short LARP kind of way. But at the end of 20 minutes, something happens, then the world implodes.
So something happens at their table, some event in the game itself
Yeah.
destroys everything.
Yeah.
If somebody breaks a rule or does something that according to the rules would sort of indicate the end of the world.
Maybe.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I mean, good God. There's like one group of guys, my gaming group, my D&D group. There was one of the guys had discovered this tablet where anything you write upon it comes true. And anything that gets wiped off is destroyed. And at the end of it, one of the characters, the villain had written this character's name. He was like, I'll smash the tablet, if you surrender. And one of the characters, turned invisible, killed him, stabbed him in the neck, killed him. They had a brawl, and then somebody else ripped off their mask and revealed who they really were. And it was this horrible fight. And at the end of it, the priest was just like, I'm going to destroy this accursed item so that, we never have to deal with this again. And as he smashes it, one of the other characters is like, you son of a bitch, my name is, and I'm like, your character vanishes, because the name had not been erased, it was destroyed, right? His name is still on the tablet. So his character basically ceased to exist and was gone forever. And that was it.
What's interesting about that is because that becomes a no-win situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, of course, immediately we love new characters. And fast forward 20 years, and then it turned out it was like this dark cult of people who still remember that character and worship him and believe he was something God. So something like that completely ruins, in a sense, but of course in a way that we enjoyed. We all thought it was hysterical and it was very fun, and it was a great way to end that whole bloodbath.
But how long have these characters been in years? I mean,
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, man, that is so
And it was a permanent death?
Oh, yeah. So that kind of sucks. Yeah, but I mean, that's
Because
something
if they
that
erase the name.
that's something that you create, right? Or else, like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you play a game like Dungeons and Dragons where mortality is a fact, right? Then you have to embrace that. Like you have to say, okay, I accept that with the roll of the dice, at any time, my character can be killed arbitrarily, right? So this doesn't follow a
That's
hero's.
perfect for them.
It's not a hero's journey, right? Hero's journey is something completely different. Like in film, it works that the hero starts off as a young boy or girl and then rises to power and then achieves some kind of goal at great personal cost. We've got those actions. D&D isn't like that at all. D&D is more like real life in the sense that there are these external factors that we cannot control that happen to us in a lot of ways. And yes, we happen to the world in the sense we take action, but at any time, something terrible can happen and take you out of commission, and it's just like playing Monopoly. You roll the wrong thing, you land on boardwalk, you're bankrupt. It's over.
Right.
That's what you accept when you sign up for a game. But
Right.
if you don't want that, if you want a game with a hero's journey, then you play something else like, I'm trying to think of a good example, a story game that's more heroic.
That's okay, I don't
But
think we
it-
want that. I think we want
But,
Yeah.
right, sometimes.
arbitrary
arbitrary
death
things
is
happen.
exactly what we need.
It
It's
is.
all the evolutionary biology stuff that's gonna come later.
Yeah. I mean, there's a game that I write for, like I designed a lot of adventures for this game, called The Lamentations of the Flame Princess. And in it, there's a spell called Summon. And you summon a demon, right? And if you roll the wrong thing, literally the demon will arrive and destroy the world and the game ends.
Perfect.
Right? Like that
Perfect.
happens, right?
Say that again if you would.
Well, if you roll the wrong thing on the demon summoning table, if you roll the dice and you get the wrong result in this random table of events, then literally the world ends and everybody dies. And it's a running joke, of course, because the game is so brutal.
Because everybody's prepared for that. Like
Yeah.
everybody knows that's a possibility.
And that's what makes it so exciting, you know? It's like
Yeah.
touching the third rail.
Yeah. Bet in the pot and put, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's the thing. Like, when you introduce
I'll-
dice into a game, you have to have an element of risk. There has to be a possibility of harm in order for there to be any kind
Any
of
tension.
visceral thrill or tension.
Uh-huh.
Otherwise, you can LARP, and instead, the tension comes from the actions of the people around you and the uncertainty of who will turn on me or say
Right.
something that forces my character to make a difficult decision I don't want to make, which is, of course,
Right.
what you want to do.
Is there a way to combine them?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there are plenty of games that hybridize, the
Dice
LARP
wasn't
and the.
Hybridize. Like that one.
Can you talk more about the idea in the game that you designed, where you can't solve your own crisis and you have to depend, and you only have a certain number of turns, and how that functions?
Sure. Usually the game is about 90 minutes, but it really doesn't end until everybody has exhausted all of their potential solutions, right? So at the beginning of the game, let's say you're the medical officer. Now you've got three problems. One is bridge-based, meaning, for example, I can't get any of the airlocks to open, right? Bridge, can you get those back online? The other problem, of course, is I've got a quantum flux compression outside my part of the ship, and it's eating away at the hull and the shields. Engineering, you have to solve this, right? And then the third problem is for weapons. I've got a xenomorph on board this vessel. Something came through the quantum flux. It's an alien of some kind. I can't see it, but it's banging at the door. Weapons, can you get the drones online and take this thing out? As a medical officer, you have no way of solving any of these issues, right? You cannot do anything about it. The things you have are, you've got a series of high-tech medical devices, right? You've got a rotating flange emitter, a blood work analyzer, et cetera. You can't use any of this to help yourself. But engineering, because of exposure to the xenomorph, has this horrible cysts all over her arms and face, and she thinks she's dying. Well, there's no way for you to get there, but you can upload the retroviral sequencer into the mainframe, and then engineering can download it to the matter transporter, and you can help engineering that way. So you have the ability to help these other three people remotely, but no way to address your own problems. So you're dependent on it. But the only catch is, there's a chance at any given time that any one of those three people could fail to help you. So in a way, you want to be on your best behavior. But on the other hand, your character sheet tells you despise engineering and bully and belittle engineering every chance you get. Well, if you want to play the game right, you're going to stay in character. Because that's part of where the fun comes in anyhow. And it's not about dying, because no matter when you die, the game still lasts until the end of the game, when you get in the escape pod and the ship blows up with you in it, or you go insane, or whatever. So you don't actually worry about losing. You just want to focus on getting the most fun out of it, and that means being the character you're supposed to be, which in the case of the medical officer, to engineer, you're a complete bastard. why? You think engineering is a drug user and an alcoholic, or you think engineering is incompetent, or you just never liked that person. And so you belittle that character, and then of course, naturally, that person is not really inclined to help you, right? But maybe you set it up so that you're like, well, you fix this for me, and then we'll talk about your problems. Blackmail it, right? Not in the rules, it's just something that emerges through gameplay. The players themselves figure out ways to survive. So yeah, that's kind of how that's set up. So you're dependent on the other people, but you have no way of knowing if they'll actually come through and help you or not.
That's a nice phrase.
One of the fun key elements of that is the, while you're in the restroom, is that like you have the ability to help other people solve their problems, but the problems you can't solve them yourself. You have to be able to enlist the help of others.
Within one break, I mean, where would you know, like who would you ask a question of? You know, in the chat box that you said was there.
Like, you would only use the chat box if there's something you don't understand, or if you're not sure about something. But like during the actual game itself, you would just be in a room, or in a discussion rather with engineering, and you'd say, engineering, I'm trapped here, I need you to upload this or whatever. And the character who's playing engineering would say, all right, here's what I can do. I'm in the engine room right now, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna try and upload, get the warp core into overload, and then figure out some of that power needed for the ship. Give me a minute, and then engineering will sign off, and then you got another seat with somebody, and then you're waiting to find out, and the engineer comes back on. And maybe the player has picked up the iPad and moved to another room, and maybe it's like, I've seen people, they kill the lights and they turn on like a blue light bulb. Because you can. I've done a lot of stuff with filters, like I'll take saran wrap over my webcam to create fog and mist, and it works. It's true. Yeah, there's like a dozen versions of it on YouTube because people record their gaming sessions.
So we can watch people play
Yeah,
video
you
games.
can see people playing games.
So if it were live and they didn't have a chat box, how would they ask questions?
That's the only way. Because you're not allowed to play a character, you have to actually. If you were actually playing the game around a table,
Yes, if you were.
you'd have to pass notes, I guess, or else find a way to ask. I don't know how you break character, because that's kind of the deal. Is you can't stay in character all the time. I've never actually done it live. I would imagine writing a note would be a safe bet, or a private conversation with the person playing the bridge, because that's usually
Right, so like we have a game master on stage with us, and like how we could,
the code phrase then.
yeah, a code phrase.
Like I said, word.
We had sort of created like a little physical gesture somehow.
Yep.
A code phrase. Like there's these little tweens that they text flirt together that I've seen, and they have like a very complicated series of talking outside of fiction, and like series of rules of like you have to have 3 asterisks if it's this, if it's a question for her, if it's just a general question, or if it's a request. And it's like 3 different things she had to do. And got it wrong, the tweens got really mad.
Oh.
Really mad.
Yeah, it's fun when you can find a way to do it within the context of the fiction. Right? I keep coming back to the notion of ornithology and wondering if there's any way to work birds,
Really want to.
feathers, any of that either into the ARG
Yeah.
or the large elements or the narrative itself, or even the game, I guess.
Maybe I'm thinking about it wrong. Like, explode this box, but here's the box I'm living in. In 20 minutes, we need, like the beating heart of the show is the ornithologist talking about random chance and friendship and depending on one another, and like you need to know, like use your imagination, there's like this thing, we have if only. So we need in 20 minutes to deeply attach to these two especially, but all of the kind of, not the characters inside the game, but the characters out of game, the LARPer characters. We need to attach to them, understand that it's a game, and get a vague sense of it. They don't really need to know how to play. They mostly just need to see, like, this is a game. And understand that it's going along, and then it broke forever. So they need to like the people and think the game, even though they don't maybe understand it, is like fun and funny. I don't know, maybe they do need to attach and understand how to play the game and not want it to break. I don't know.
Well, I also feel like because we're a theater company, we're not LARPers, like what we've been building up till now is it lives somewhere between an imaginary world they've invented and a LARP. And there's a game master president, so they have these characters that they know and they've been playing for a long time. Periodically, questions will come up, and sometimes it's about gameplay, but sometimes it's about the history of like, well, when did that happen and what war, and so they'll check in with the game master. And we've been doing a physical gesture for that. But right now, the game, it's not like the world implode, like Leonard is a LARPer playing a character named Fendist. Leonard gets upset with how the gameplay is going and leaves. So the gaming session gets cut in the middle, kind of. It doesn't quite resolve. Like a problem comes up where essentially the game master says one of you has to die, and you all have to choose who dies.
Right.
And Leonard is like, this sucks. I don't want to choose anyone to die. So it's what we're doing right now is like the phrase you said about there has to be the possibility of harm. The game master essentially throws in, one of you must die and you all choose, is what we've been playing with so far. And that there's a gamer, a LARPer who gets upset by that and leaves. And so that's what we've been doing. So it's kind of like Melson Bourne is the imaginary world. It doesn't quite break and end like the world, as we've been doing it now, the world doesn't end, but the game master poses a question that would kill off one of these characters who's been around for years.
And it's almost like a double blind. So at first they think that the threat to the world Melzenborn is their enemy, the Insignians. But then they learn that the Insignians have been killed off, and that the real threat is not their enemy, but it's something inside them that is one of them that's going to destroy them. And then the session with Leonard gets mad at this, he leaves. But then what the audience learns through the puzzles is that it wasn't within the fiction of the game. What actually happens is that Leonard dies, and that the game ends because something happens in the real world. So the game master introduces this idea of one of them dying and the world destroying, but it happens in the actual real world.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah.
Yeah,
But
I think what.
I don't think, like, just like none of it is what we're, like, deeply attached, like, that's the thing, it's like, we like some of this stuff, but there's, like, no deep attachment. What we're deeply attached to is that the audience understands it's a game, vaguely gets a sense of it, attaches deeply to these characters, and then feels the loss of the game, and then later on really feels the loss of a person.
And the ornithologist's core conceit, the nature of the lecture that she's giving is about selection.
The role of beauty and evolution. So it's sort of a lecture about the roles of chance and choice in your life, and the idea that and this scientific idea about that things don't tie back to survival, but they're just for pleasure, for beauty. That's
Wow.
sort of the intellectual concept.
It's great in the sense that, like what I was saying before about how a lot of role-playing games like D&D are very chance-driven, right? It's not necessarily about whether you choose to live or die. You literally roll the dice to see what's going to happen, right? But in LARP, more often than not, you choose, what your character does, and you don't necessarily have to worry about rolling the dice to see what happens. And especially freeform LARP, there are no dice rolls to tell you whether you live or die. Your character simply goes through these experiences, and then you may choose, for your character to take a background role and let somebody else shine. But it's not rolling the dice, looking at a table and saying, all right, I'm dead. But what's funny is that that's what the game master is doing, right? Playing God.
Yeah.
Selecting arbitrarily for this group to kill off a character which isn't part of the construct that they've all agreed to. So it is that sensation of saying, wow, this really sucks. This isn't what I signed up for. I didn't want to play a game where I could roll a 10-sided die and immediately kick the bucket. I wanted to play a game about feelings and choice and beauty. But instead, God just plucks me off the board and says, you're dead.
Just gave the speech.
It's a very strong, it's a great motif, right? I mean, it fits. Somebody signs up to play a LARP, and instead the dungeon master just decides, nah, we're going to play a game with mortality.
Yeah.
We're going to play a game where I'm just arbitrarily as the deity going to pluck you off the board. It's a metaphor for the life we live. That's it.
Yeah, because what seems a little, interesting about this game is compared to the way that we've created it is that, like, these characters have been around for years, and this world is huge. fiction, the thing, catalogs the history of it. And so to actually come in and introduce the idea that somebody is going to have to die is so, there hasn't been, you died 2 weeks ago and had to create a new character. I mean, they've really lived in these characters for, from game to game, from session to session to session to session.
Play.
Mhm.
Pursue the bleed.
Yeah.
Play.
Yes, so,
Does their game world involve birds at all?
we're trying to,
Yes, it does.
trying to work
It
it,
has
yes.
messenger birds.
It has messenger.
Right.
It's sort of roughly set in 1825.
Send the crows to the mole.
So they send like, it's like a backwards in time game, not like a less like science fiction or future. So they send messenger birds. They talk about birds like that. He's a captain at sea, and he'll periodically talk about the seabirds.
Yeah.
So we have it a little bit.
It's slightly steampunky, but not really, but nobody has contraptions or anything. But the puzzles feel steampunky, and
Yeah.
putting it in Victoria
That
here
sounds
is
pretty cool.
yes, seems steampunky, it's a little bit.
Seems
Yeah.
like one key thing might be what it is that's what does the game master introduce that would really upset Fendis? But like it doesn't seem quite specific enough to say one of you is going to die. But what if there's a fiction around?
I know, well, like,
Yeah.
I love that, like, there's this tablet that you write something on it and you, like
Or
that's
the
true.
demon summoning table too.
Yeah,
They're
yeah.
at the demon summoning table.
And it's just like this,
and it goes
no
It's
way
Titanic
to
territory.
roll.
But
Demon
it
summoning
seems
table.
like if it's almost a game master faux pas, not, but like it's almost something where the game master, he changes the game we're playing, right? Like we think we're playing this. So
Right.
it's almost like you're at the demon summoning table, something happens that the players didn't know could happen. Or the game master creates this new capacity where suddenly before no one was dying and suddenly he proposes like a death, a character death. Or something of that
The
level.
thing about those is always, it's like, why? No, like, it just like, it uses up so much time, real estate time, because we've only got 20 minutes, it's like, no. That if there were a way for it to be something we kind of vaguely knew was possible, like at the demon summoning table, but the chances are like getting struck by lightning, and we get struck by lightning.
Yeah. Right. And then it's nice if they get struck. Right now we have it, they get struck by lightning, and the other player, like no one's happy about it, but the other players are checking in with the game master to clarify the rules around it. And Fendist, Leonard stays in game and is kind of refusing.
Right, and I refuse to accept that this is a possibility.
So those are
And then
what
ultimately,
we miss.
That forgotten detail, right, was the kicker. in
Yeah.
that game, in the sense that somebody had forgotten that another character had written a name upon the tablet that he smashed. You know, if Fendis shoots it down, maybe steampunky was an original and he shoots it down. Somebody else is like, oh, but the swan, your swan, your mystical essence is tied to, he's still on board, right? I mean, nobody took it off, right? You know, and then he's like, oh, and then.
Like, he has to go back through the history
You know,
and like, no, the swan is still on the
It's still there,
original.
right? You killed the swan or the albatross or whatever, and then he says, well, your spirit is tied to that animal, you killed your spirit, and your character has to die.
that's interesting.
You know, or something along those lines,
Forgotten
some,
detail. That's good, that's good.
detail that's ignored or overlooked, and then because of the rules, we can't retcon this thing, right? We agreed years ago that we would never go back and retcon. Once the decision's made, we go forward, otherwise we're just gonna keep changing everything week to week, right, guys? We gotta have narrative continuity, so we won't go back.
That's
and
red
change. Oh, sorry, retroactive continuity is when,
Retroactive continuity.
That's awesome.
yeah, it's common, comic books, for example,
You
right?
guys are science fiction nerds.
Yeah. But yeah, so retroactive continuity is when you're like, okay, no, actually that was a poison arrow. I take it back. And sometimes you do that in games and it's called fudging, you know.
Would you say, like, if someone was like, retcon, like, is my spirit animal really tied to that, or whatever it was?
Yeah.
Would someone say retcon, or would?
Yes.
But you would use it in terms of like, if things seem to change, you would use it in terms of like, wait, no, that's a retcon.
Yeah.
That you've changed something to make, like for instance, like a retcon is the very first time that you see Kirk's full name is actually on a gravestone, and it's James, or one of it is, it's not Tiberius, it's not T, it's like James L. Kirk on a gravestone. And then later, he gets his name referred to as James Tiberius Kirk. So that's essentially a retcon. That means that the gravestone is not really, his name's not James L. Kirk, his name is James Tiberius Kirk. So you just accept that that was something that was made that was wrong, so you retcon. Later, you change.
So
how you
retcon is
stand.
a correction.
You make an excuse like, oh yeah, that was a typo.
Oh, you just pretend it didn't happen. I mean,
Right, right.
original- Original Superman, he couldn't fly, he could only jump,
Right.
and he killed people left and right. You know? And so they retroactively established a new continuity. So the retcon can be a verb or an noun. You can retcon something, and that is a retcon of this story. Right?
Got it. And it essentially updates the history to what you want it to be now.
In order
Right,
to-
or it just makes okay the big fuck up of his name. Like, oh, it was Shrek,
Yeah.
even though that was
Or
actually his name.
like
Right,
a really
we
good
used to talk about
example
that.
is like right before in the DC universe, like in 2009, basically they killed off like all of Jack Kirby's New Gods. But the book that was happening right after that was very specifically tied to the presence of all of the new gods. So they had to basically write all of that out of continuity and retcon the way all of that happened and made it so that, well, what really happened is that when all of the gods died, their souls fell backwards in time and landed in this certain place, and then they moved forward in time to here so that they can be in this place when this book happens.
It's definitely a form of, well, it facilitates a suspension of disbelief, right? When you have something that's
Yes.
Right.
so heavily developed, a fantasy that is so believable, whether it's a series of novels like Harry Potter or movies or comic books, it's frequently necessary in order to maintain that suspension of disbelief to find a way to hand wave and excuse things from the past
Yeah.
that
But-
aren't necessarily consistent.
I wonder in this case, so it's a forgotten detail, and it would we somehow stumble on a forgotten detail. That subtly means like one of us has to die. And it seems like someone could go, well, no, like let's retcon it, and my spirit animal wasn't tied to that, so none of us have to die. Like, but someone would disallow the retcon in this case and say, no, actually, you
Well,
can't.
well, what he was saying is that like, no, we had agreed from the beginning of this game, there is no retcon. All deaths are permanent deaths and there is no retcon.
That
So
we-
if someone
we
tries to
have to
retcon,
follow
we're
that.
like, we don't
We
retcon.
already
Yeah.
agreed to that.
The other thing, in the most recent one, he's been, the game master has been, throwing out rules and rolling in the last little one when we were playing around, intermittently from the beginning of this portion of the session that the audience is viewing. So it's not that weird that at the end he rolls and throws this big massive curveball at us. Like my character just doesn't agree
But-
with that.
But we need to like, be able to let go, like,
Yeah,
he
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
rolling dice the
Yeah.
whole time.
Right.
I mean,
I'm just
he
saying
has
what
the-
happened the very last time
Yeah,
we were
yeah, yeah.
playing around.
I'm also very interested in the idea of like, oh, so, yeah, I mean, just hypothetically, maybe a dumb version, like, oh, so in between our last session and here, I got together with Leonard and we actually looked at something that was happening here and we realized that because now it's, October 25th of 1825, this thing goes into effect and now we have to deal with, the disease because this is when the disease happens. And so, because it was coming down on us, now we have to deal with that.
Historical accuracy.
It's nice that they've built a future timeline that they forget about.
Yeah.
Oh God, this is late.
The problem for me with this is, like, I love this idea, but we've got 20 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, that's just kind of a dumb way.
And like, we can't break the game, like, we have to establish the game to break the game for the audience, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the stuff we're talking about in terms of how, I think there's essentially 15 minutes of playing, and then there's the 5 minutes of breaking.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty efficient discussion.
I wonder if we
So-
don't, whoa, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, it needs to be in the scene of an efficient discussion, so words like retcon and stuff. I mean, for me, the more jargon we have, gaming jargon, the better, and we don't have a lot, I mean, these are so useful to get some of this kind of rich.
I'm wondering if instead of having to make the whole world break apart, if it isn't just a single character, like with the tablet or some other device like that, and in order to get that caring about Leonard and caring about these two, if it's Christine is the one who's going to die, and rather him being selfish, like I don't want to die, he's looking out for Christine. Christine is the one that's like, no, we have to go by the rule,
Yeah.
and he ends up.
Save yourself!
Come to my ship!
No, we thought of a forgotten detail?
Possible forgotten detail.
What?
Like if we perhaps, we'll just kind of, again, kind of a dumb version, but say, you know, the Incinians have been our, the antagonists of the game for so long. And like right kind of the start of this, there had been a decision that if the Incinians had ever been wiped out or were completely gone, then you know something had to change. Like there's a result of that. But we've been doing this for years, and we've been battling them for years because you know, as we see that is so squashed from all the water, you know, or whatever, however the context of that goes. But that could be a good place to tie that detail. Like if something happens that wipes them all out, and it's like, oh, but that means, you know, Christine, remember Christine is, you know, she's a halfling, she's part Incinian, so she's susceptible to the disease.
Wow.
Oh yeah, she's got Insidian blood.
Which is actually very common in fantasy and sci-fi kind of stuff, so
I
it's
mean,
actually a good trope.
it seems nice, and it goes actually back to Meg version. Like if it seems fine to me to have it be that Christine's gotta die, and Leonard's like, no, whatever, antidote, vaccine, and he starts coming up
I
with
want to
stuff.
check in though. Are we okay with like, we had talked briefly about yesterday the loss of the game, like driving them into the puzzle, like can you make the game work by doing these puzzles? The game doesn't work and we go back to, remember Melsonborn, less of Melsonborn,
I
Melsonborn's over.
think we've been saying that there isn't
We
language.
started yesterday thinking there wasn't language, and we confused our, like, I think we misunderstood each other. I think we had decided before yesterday even, like at the end of the first day, that it didn't seem like they should attach. It should be clean.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
not like a saving Melsonborn. It's just like they watch that scene happen and they watch Stacy goes Spokane and
Yeah,
Melsonborn,
yeah.
and then the game master.
Okay, so we're not saving
that class. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They're
I just think the next thing is something more played on curiosity.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
than never.
Okay.
To me, it'd be great if it drove forward, like if it, you know, if
Yeah.
it didn't have to drive Melvin with it.
Right, and, yeah, so we're in the puzzle room, basically it's a group of people from Spokane, 2003 puzzling, and in the puzzle room they learn more about that, but they also go forward to 2014, which is when they give a lecture.
Let's read it to you, what we have.
That,
Is that okay?
Yeah.
because like with this whole new version we did, because it's so much
Yeah.
nicer to.
Yeah, and plus then we'll get. So yeah, so now we need to go understand the game, attach to the characters, and have a crisis.
Should we read it?
But also like make the whole thing, like we want the whole thing to be really fun and funny to watch. So there's like dances thrown in and like a game of Dizzy Rooster, and then there's metaphor games. Metaphor game in here?
I've got metaphor games,
Right.
I've got Disney Rooster. I mean, that's why I was thinking it might be fun to do it on our feet so that he's seeing the things we're doing. I mean, it's all stuff we've done before.
Okay.
But I mean, we can also just read it. Whatever is most fun.
Illuminate!
Oh, sorry.
Got you.
Don't say it like that.
Instructions. Thank you.
Illuminate!
Wait, Carrie's going to read stations.
Okay, cool.
Oh, yeah.
The audience arrives, they are asked to choose a talisman. There are 6 symbols from which to choose. The audience then enters the theater, a nearly dark room, low candlelight. Their eyes adjust, Game Master appears.
Time sheds your hold upon us. The world begins to fall away and we are free from its trappings. Descending upon the North Country, we find ourselves in the land of Melsonborn. Tucked away in their high dwelling, we find the Tintosh clan. Illuminate!
The room brightens slightly, and 4 characters are visible who were not visible before. Garganta, Pantagruel, and Gorn pace the room. Cinnamon is slumped over the desk asleep.
Garganta begins tonight's play.
The Game Master recedes to a corner of the room. Throughout the action, he will roll dice, call out events, and answer questions. Pantagruel, Garganta, and Agorn move about the room. Cinnamon sleeps.
Garganta says, what an awful night.
Agorn breathes.
Garganta notes, a strange glow pierces the sky.
Pantagruel answers, the fires of instinct, they grow ever closer. Perhaps it is time to put them down.
Slightly confused, Garganta remarks, they're our subjects. They're already down.
Hush. Somebody is sleeping.
Silence, wind.
The perform the yo-yo dine dance.
Gordon, Gargana, and Cinnamon perform the yo-yo dine dance. Pantagruel plays. Return to play.
Pantagruel's turn.
Pantagruel corrects Gargana. It isn't true anyhow, not since the soft treaty.
Gargana, surprised, asks what?
Nelson Bohr no longer rules over Insane. They're no longer our subjects.
You're kidding, when did that happen?
Pantagruel responds, 4 weeks ago, they captured Findus, forced us into a sovereignty agreement.
I wasn't here for that.
You were.
Captain Fendist is at
He
sea.
was captured. Now he's at sea.
Gargana sighs, then he'll be home soon.
Pantagruel agrees. He'll be home soon.
Pantagruel echoes. You'll be home soon.
Silence. Wind.
Repeat the yo-yo dine.
Angkor, Gargana, and Cinnamon perform the yo-yo dine dance. Pantagruel plays. Return to play.
Pantagruel, description of Ensign level 4.
Brother, sister. Oh, sorry.
Pantagruel.
Brother, sister, Ensign is planning an attack. We must prepare for battle. Sharpen the knives, heat the oil. Insignians are like cockroaches. They can survive anything. They practically live inside a volcano. They endure lava floods on a regular basis. Their entire forest, everything around them has been burned over and over again, and still they flourish. We'll have to come up with some especially brutal, crafty attacks.
Angkor moves to the bar lab puzzle.
Well, glad you should mention it. You see, I've been developing a parasitic fungus which I believe may very well carry us to victory. Once a person is infected with the fungus, it builds up pressure in his or her head, eventually blowing a hole in the skull and nesting inside the brain itself. The fungus then takes over the motor control of the host. The infected Insignians will be our pawns. We can walk them into a marketplace.
Pantagruel touches globe, addresses GM.
Ensign doesn't have markets, right?
Correct. Ensign is barbaric. Ensign is a barbaric hamlet, no natural capital. They do not have markets.
How do they buy their food? They grow it. But all their land is scorched.
No, they eat weird stuff that grows in burnt soil.
They eat critch wheat.
As I was saying, the infected host will go into a crowded place and do whatever we like. Without control of his or her motor functions, we could make it kill a bunch of people or start a fire.
Insignians always survive fire.
Fine, a flood, whatever. I'm saying we can control them or kill them. Make them kill each other is a brilliant plan that promises zero cost of life to Nelson Bohr.
Impressive Angkor. A good fire warfare. Ahead of the times. But I suppose not out of the question. We could send birds by night to deposit the specimens and begin infections. And I've been working on a new cipher embedded inside of musical notes I've been teaching to the messenger pigeons. Once our birds are through the boundary, they'll replay the coded songs to our allies. Between the songs and the parasites, we could essentially implode Insing, cripple it from the inside out.
So, no battle?
Ideally, no. Our only warrior is at sea.
And what if this parasite fails? Then we battle?
I'm so excited to battle. Do you have some skill, some new skill we don't know about?
If this plan fails, we can move east.
Abandon our home?
Hide in the desiccated plateau.
Even further, I think, all the way to Driblet Range, hike up to Timber Bridge.
Should Timber Bridge still exist? Wasn't it destroyed in the Shaking War?
The game master consults his books while play continues.
This is a terrible idea. We're not outdoorsy.
You'd rather fight.
Yeah, I'd rather fight. It's fun. We haven't done it in forever.
Hush. Cinnamon sleeps.
Yes, the shaking wall.
Silence, wind.
Metaphor game, Antgorn begins.
The Shaking War was not unlike an ice dagger jammed in my thigh.
Ah, yes. And to be an ice dagger jammed into your thigh is not like a lover. It's not unlike a lover.
No, can I keep
Or we can show him what it is. It's not unlike a lover breaking your heart for the first time.
Ah, yes. And a lover breaking your heart for the first time, to me, is not unlike a deer that plunges through the forest, over the logs and over the rocks, and through the rivers and over the stream, and then gets very far, only to find itself impaled on a thorn bush from which it cannot escape.
Oh, yes. And
You're
to
asleep.
me, and to me, when I dance.
Okay. Oh,
yeah.
And in the yo-yo dance,
Okay.
I thought maybe, well, it doesn't matter. But, and the deer that plunges through the forest and is not unlike the thing and it's racing.
Oh, my.
I behold thy
Rofatum.
Ropatum.
Ropatum.
The metaphor game is over, return to play.
What's she so sleepy for?
She was up most of the night writing letters.
The plans. We'll need to enlist them all if we wish to survive the onslaught.
What an awful night. The wind is picking up. I feel a draft.
The fire needs tending. Crackle, crackle, crackle. Crackle, crackle.
Gargana, speech about Fendist, level 8 wistfulness.
Lovely, wistful. I'm looking out of this window, as so often I do during the day. Every day, all day, the days I imagine Captain Findus out at sea, braving the storm, seeking knowledge that might aid our cause. He suffers so for our sake, foregoing his land comforts. Land comforts. I like to imagine that from his ship he could see so far as this window, and looking from outside in, he would see the glow of our drawing room, the candlelight, the soft piano notes, the warm fire. I think I'm doing too many things at once. Like I'm trying to be wistful and also give hints. I think what a comfort it would be to him to see us here watching for his return.
Gargana makes a good point. Bendis should have returned by now. They released him over a fortnight ago. What keeps him?
Perhaps he never received my letter. Perhaps a storm has kept him. We have no way of knowing.
Gargana thinks about Captain Findus.
Pantagruel suggests Gargana give it a rest about Fendis.
Antoine suggests Pantagruel stow the verses in the face of these dark developments. Fate can shed some light. Antoine has Pantagruel a holy book.
Pantagruel knocks the holy book from Antoine's hand.
Counter. Pantagruel has 8 hit points, and Thorn has 8 hit points.
Antoine slashes a freezing cloak around Pantagruel.
Miss!
Employing her levitation desk, Pantagruel rises 6 feet off the ground and kicks Antoine's in the face.
Hit! 3 points damage to Antoine.
Antoine is shocked. His nose spurts with blood. He turns the blood into a rope and binds Pantagruel's feet. She crashes to the ground.
Hit! 4 points damage, Pantagruel.
Pantagruel, enraged, turns the bloodbind into a snake and sticks it on Antoine.
Hit! 2 points damage.
Antoine unsheathes his dagger and slices the head off the snake.
Ooh, miss!
Ha ha! Pantagruel uses a changing spell to turn the snake into a miniature black hole. All the matter is sucked from Antoine's cells.
Hit! All remaining damage is done. Pantagruel victorious.
May I have my mana returned to me?
Pantagruel.
Use a restoring spell. Pantagruel returns the matter to Antoine's cell, so he might continue playing.
Thank you.
Encounter ends.
From her sleeping position in the chair, Cinnamon touches the globe.
I was only supposed to lose 3 turns. May I interplay?
Ah, no, sorry.
Cinnamon wakes!
Cinnamon has been sleeping near the fireplace. Now she wakes. Initially, she speaks in kind of medical gibberish.
Oh, no, it's gone. What is it? What? The letters? I've written them. I've written most of them to the clan of the Claw, the clan of the Sun, the clan of the Horn Trident clan, but I haven't finished the letters to the River clan and the Leaf clan because I couldn't recall the names of their frondeurs, and then I couldn't recall the result of the Crippen conflict.
The frondeur of the River Clan is Jarrett Beeson. The frondeur of the Leaf Clan is Regis Pake. The Crippen conflict was peacefully resolved. You may communicate freely.
Excellent. Here and here.
Cinnamon writes the names of the fraudeurs on the final 2 letters and hands them to the game master.
Excellent work, Sylvain. You have more than made up for last Wednesday's. Blah. You have more than made up for last Wednesday's anachronism.
Thank you.
Return to play. Pantagruel's turn.
Cinnamon, your hands must be so cold. Warm yourself by the fire.
Cinnamon leaps to the fire.
Cinnamon, impending threat. Level 6 fear.
Crackle, crackle, crackle. They're coming, you know, and we won't defeat them. They shall destroy our outer lands, rape us, consume us, imprison the villagers. It doesn't matter how many of the clans agree to join us. The Insignians will steal our bodies, dismantle us, display our organs as trophies. We shall all die real and true death, and then we will wish we had climbed into this fire when we still had a chance, climbed right through the flames and into the other world, burned up our own bodies in order to free ourselves from certain pain.
Silence. Wind. Repeat.
Player choice.
I'm going to suggest freeze.
Pantagruel denies.
We're going to suggest a seance. Cinnamon denies.
Pantagruel requires the Song of the Ancestors.
The song of the ancestors has been required. The song of the ancestors must be sung.
Agreed.
They sing Melbourne theme song and possibly catch song.
Let us not sing it.
Follow me.
Then just come in the middle of it. Okay, if we want to just do that.
Righteous.
Fundamentally.
Belting the final verse.
The hounds are howling on the heath. In the fields, leaves are crashing on the shore, and the saints are at the door. Follow me to, follow me to, follow me to Mass and Lord.
Pantalone, I return once more, unrested my life from the icy grip of the sea.
Fendus enters the room, Pantagruel, Christine, and Fendus, Leonard embrace.
You received my note.
My note,
I like that.
and it says, ah yes, the bird appeared a fortnight back. Upon withdrawing the message from the bird's slender leg perch, and reading the desperate words therein, I made what haste was possible. So you believe Ensign to be in the mood?
An attack is imminent. I've written letters to the clans.
The birds have been instructed in coded messages, songs I have taught to them, and they'll carry these messages to our allies.
Work on the parasite has been completed. The birds will carry along their messages. We should have control of the singing in 5 weeks out.
And if all that fails, we can pull their bodies apart, limb by limb.
Well then, cheery ho, all is well. I just points out that his safe return is cause to celebrate. He proposes again.
Cinnamon requests Dizzy Rooster Pork Cordial.
Organa hates Dizzy Rooster Pork Cordial.
The game shall be Dizzy Rooster for a cordial.
Angkor makes a noise and tosses Findus to escape.
Canes, heads, spin!
Oh, Boo-boo!
Acorn and Fendus play Dizzy Rooster.
Come on, Fendus.
Dizzy Rooster goes something like this. Each player has a cane. The players place their foreheads on top of their canes. They spin around the cane 10 times. Then, in utter dizziness, they attempt to run to the bar and pour a cordial. The first person to bring their cordial to one of the ladies wins. Cinnamon and Pantagruel of Argana cheer for Acorn and Fendus. The victor receives congratulations.
Ah, what fun. What fun.
Captain Fendus, won't you tell us of your adventures?
Certainly. I finally managed to escape myself by wielding a man-dog disguised from the floor straw. Then I snuck through the obsidian tunnels down the magma cliffs, fought off some Antinian knaves, and reclaimed my ship.
Brave.
My ship, the Veerhorn, her mast trembled against the heavy storms. I feared for sure it might snap, but she sailed true and strong.
Never forget, Cinemac.
Ah, and your ship sailing true and strong is not unlike a fish swimming so brusquely through the sea.
And a fish swimming so brusquely through the sea is not unlike a horse in a whole stampede of horses who takes the lead and leads them off a cliff.
Aha, the horse in a whole stampede of horses who takes the lead and leads them off the cliff is not unlike a bunny burrowing down into a hole and making an escape route into the ocean and sprouting gills and learning to swim.
Ah, and for me, a bunny burrowing down into a hole for an escape route to the sea and sprouting gills and learning to swim.
Wow.
Is not unlike a tree that groweth so strong inside the forest and shoots up high, high, higher than the rest of the trees in order to reach the sun and sprout several new leaves.
To me, a tree growing up inside the forest, with roots so strong and growing so
Oh
high.
my.
Everyone's
Go hot on.
Fendus, continue.
We survived that night's terrible storm. Oh, sorry.
We survived that night's terrible storm. And in the morning, as dawn broke and the clouds lifted, a small bird landed in the prow of the ship and stayed with us for the remainder of the journey, all the way to Mousington to Steel Harbor. It was amazing.
Oh, it was probably a puffin or an egret. Did it sing?
Yes.
Ah, an egret then. They're very strong, those two votes.
A letter arrives.
Wait, by bird, I didn't see.
Check. Check the mantle.
Sure enough, there on the mantle, a letter that wasn't there before.
Bring the letter to me, Agilorn. I must read it, for it is an interjection. Addressed to the members of the Tintosh clan, written on this day, 15 October 1885. Ensing has suffered a real and true death. For so long we were your enemy. For so long you focused your cruelties on us. No more. I am the last living citizen, and I shall be dead by morning. Now you must look inward, for, if not, I promise you, Melson Bourne will suffer the same fate. Like you, we tried to fight the enemy outside, but that is not the true danger. The true danger lies inside. One among you will cause the end of your world. Identify the danger and rid yourselves of it, lest you end up like us, carcasses in a burned land. Signed, Don Tristero, from Dura.
Silence each. The players need a second to take the letter in. Finally.
Is it true?
It is an interjection. Interjections are never tricks.
Counter chemist reroll.
We're in a definition phase, not terms.
So we have to identify a member of this group and what sacrifice they are.
You must choose your own response.
Right, but is it disease? Is it curable? Or is it that one of us is evil now?
But how is it that Ensign's just gone? Was it? What the heck? That's like taking away so much of what we could build.
Agreed. What was the cause of their extinction?
You must determine amongst yourselves the cause. You must determine amongst yourselves how to proceed. It is a test.
A test of what?
This interjection is a test.
Of what?
I will not allow it. I will not allow any single one of us to die.
How is it a test if one of us is poisoned?
No, it is poison. There is no antidote.
So we must just decide amongst ourselves which one of us is wrong.
No one should die. We can change the letter.
We can't change the letter, right?
Of course not.
Whatever it is that is causing this darkness, the eternal threat, we'll find a cure for it. In fact, a few months ago, I sent a Furcure root to Patagru, and...
One of her furcure root was a speaker box plant mimicking a furcure plant mimicking a furcure root. Be quiet.
and to me, a speaker box plant mimicking a Furcure root is not unlike...
Can I?
All right. Well, it's a terrible choice, but we must be diplomatic about it.
It seems like an easy choice to me. Cinna May, the youngest, the shortest, the most annoying. Plus, she, unlike the rest of us, brings no income to the family. Hardly can lift a finger. We should clearly sacrifice her. No way. You're the newest member. You've been starting a character.
I don't think we should make this decision on economic terms. It's distasteful. There are better ways to make the decision. Let's leave it up to chance, for example, so no one can be blamed. Or consider the social impact in the group. If Angor were to choose to sacrifice himself as the eldest Tintosh, it would have a nobility to it.
Melson Bourne is built well. We're civilized. Our hands no longer dirty with soil. Our faces no longer blackened by the fire of the forge. Why do we bother to develop banks, schools, hospitals, goddamn public houses, if not to keep from sacrificing one another? Everything has been so grim lately. Tired of it. I haven't. I'll go to my ship. I believe I might find a vaccine somewhere in the hold. Whatever this darkness is, we'll inoculate ourselves against it, so we can all keep playing together.
The Commissioner already said there's no antidote. Plus, Melson Bourne hasn't developed vaccines yet.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter. You don't get to fetch vaccines and imagine enough cures. You get to help us choose which one of us in this room is the internal threat, the disease. Then you get to help us cut it out. Unless it's you, then we'll cut you out.
What is wrong with you?
It's a rule, Leonard. It's a rule.
I never agreed to rules.
Of course you did.
I don't want to play in some impoverished, plague-infested fecal pigs. I want a world of beauty, of light, one full of capacities. A world where one can make whatever, where we can make of it whatever we like.
We agreed to play by the rules, Leonard. We all agree. You just don't get to make up whatever you want.
Why do we build public infrastructure? Why do we have hospitals if we're just going to kill each other? Tertiary markets are a sign of health.
Oh,
good health and an economy.
Tertiary markets of Melson Bourne can go fuck yourselves.
I'm going to leave now.
You can't. It's not your turn.
I'm going to leave now and go to my ship, where I will find a vaccine stored deep in the hold. left there accidentally by a scientist who stowed away without my knowledge. A scientist who feared for his life in the face of unenlightened powers that be. Lifting and moving the crates of textiles and sacks of grain, I will find a small vial filled with crystal blue liquid, high viscosity. Then I shall return, vaccine in hand. And at that time, Plantagu, Tintosh, you can apologize to me for your anachronisms. Good day.
Leonard exits. Silence. Spokane takes over.
Whoa, is he serious?
He's
He's
fine.
really upset.
He's fine.
Should we go after him?
No, it's fine. I'll talk to him tonight.
Well, I gotta go too.
No one leaves here without performing the courier's tragedy.
Sorry.
I'll
Whatever
start.
that is.
The game performs their closing ritual, the courier's tragedy. Doors open, Leonard peeks in.
Christine, you coming?
No, I'll talk to you later.
Christine waves him away. Leonard exits once more. The courier's tragedy continues. It takes everyone out of the room but the game master.
I've been turned, ever since I turned to this page, I'm like, how do I say
You did say this, right?
Okay. De-illuminate. Time retrace your hold upon us. The world begins to return, and we are once more subjects to its trappings. Each of you has selected a talisman. Your talisman is your clan. There are 6 clans: Leaf, River, Sun, Trident, Horn, and Claw. This is talking to the audience at this point. Awaiting each clan is a letter. Your talisman will match a wax seal. And the letter is a quest. Work with your clan to unlock the mysteries of your quest. Each clan has their own quest, and each quest its own path. As you seek your path, remember that not every clue is yours. So leave things undisturbed. Leave keys and locks, return books to their shelves. No brute force is necessary. Be thorough, but be gentle. We are an open world here. This entire room is at your disposal. Wander, explore, read, observe. Your quest is only a small part of all there is to learn from this room. You're on your own now. I shall return in 10 minutes. See you at Dragon's Lair on Thursdays.
Yes! Oh, I forgot to put that in.
Bye.
It's usually Thursdays.
Yeah, only for 2 more weeks, then I'm switching to Thursday.
Cool.
Yeah.
So my questions, this is, I feel closer to the fun. I feel like I want to know what, I don't know that the audience needs to know, but I feel like we need to know what the rules are for when the GM, like if it's just totally a whim, then I want to kind of see that, or if there's like a rule for when he calls on yo-yo diamonds or whatever, you know, like why?
I wonder, there's a lot of,
Youth sounds triggered it, like that was our way of saying we don't know what to do next.
Yeah, and then you hear a roll. I was thinking you hear like the sound of him doing something, whether it's rolling or what, that determines the next random game.
I wonder if we don't need to decide what the structure of, if we actually need to decide what the structure of this game is like View Screen, where there is something that they each need from one another that
Right.
they're trying to figure out. But there's a lot of what are like not doing yes and inside of it, where people are saying, no, you can't do that because that bridge doesn't exist anymore. And I wonder how pleasurable that is for the audience to watch. It seems like it's more interesting for the audience to see these people
Yes, and
stay
that's
inside.
what I'm
Yeah, well, or to stay inside of it and solve some kind of problem together. So we actually see them get the thing that they need from the other person, and maybe not get that thing, but then solve that other thing. Rather than, and then the breakdown at the end is stronger because we haven't seen them break outside of it and being asking all these questions about it.
I was feeling that too. If we have so much break at the end, we really don't need much breaks throughout.
And if they've been playing this game for years and years, I don't think that they're
They know
going to be
more.
quite as
They know
and
more.
also hearing you talk about LARPing, like people really stay in the LARP. There's
Yeah.
not much coming outside of it, right?
Yeah, like, it's actually extremely interesting when somebody accidentally breaks, right? Like when you're playing a game and somebody's like, no, it's her. And then everybody turns and looks at the person like, okay. And then they get it, you can physically see them like, all right, shit, all right, now I'm trading. Yes, you know, and you need a minute to really, and if you watch, you know, improv, like, Wait, Don't Tell Me, I think it's called, or the one that, you know, you'll see them, they're like, oh, fuck, okay, I'm gonna wait now. Okay. And then they do, right? So there's that moment of gathering oneself, and that adds the verisimilitude to it, because you can see that we're looking at two people. We're looking at a gamer who's pretending to be a character, right? And so you have that moment where the character stops, and the gamer's like, okay, right, oh, we killed it, okay, yes, no, you know, and get into it. That those are the moments where the audience really gloms on to the notion these people are playing games, you know, deeply in character, you know, really, you know, they're getting into it to the point where they actually become physically, or not physically, but emotionally antagonized by decisions that other people make. Like, what do you mean, no? You know, hang on, touching the cool, you know, what? And so those are just those little moments of hesitation. Like when she's just like, I was like, wow, you know, that's perfect. I've seen that, you know, where somebody just gets pushed too far and they actually like, well, we'll just quit, rage quit the group, you know, because they're like that.
Rage quit!
Just rage quit. Yeah. You know, and I've done it, you know. I've quit gaming groups because I was like, right, this, so yeah, those unfortunate moments are great.
Yeah, there was ones at work, I think, that are like, people being like, or Gargano being like, wait, what? And it can kind of be, it's still in the game, but I think the ones that don't work are like, oh wait, but I thought they don't have markets. The ones that, I think we don't need that.
Yeah.
Like, I think there can be these hesitation levels of like, oh, right, earlier, and then it's not until the, whatever the device is that tells us anything's gone and now there's this new thing, like, I don't know if it's a ladder, I don't know if it's a dice swap.
But I wonder if we can't like chase down Thomas's desire that I also, that we sparkled with, of like, we solve our way, like we work our way to actually destroying Instinct, and then that's the forgotten detail of like.
As a result of seeing us, of creating success.
Right, so it doesn't have to be like
of
an
something.
interjection or anything, but they see the game work all the way to the point where it's like, and then the game master's like,
But you
Oh.
just did this.
right, there's a consequence to destroying Instinct that we forgot about, or that,
Right.
or that he assumes nobody had forgotten about, but that the group is like, what?
Yeah, like they have this great plan, they hang out, and then they enact the plan, and then they're like, what?
Would also would mirror the thing that we want to create in the puzzles with the audience, to where 6 of those pieces come together to then create a solution.
Yeah.
If we each bring together and negotiate our things, Findus comes in for the last piece, Instinct's destroyed, then it's,
That's nice, he
you know,
comes from C and he's got the,
I put our pieces together.
yeah. And
Well, and it doesn't have to be literal pieces.
No,
Yeah,
no.
it's like it's the pod. I'm in the pod, and I need to
I mean,
transmute
the
to you.
thing I've been picturing for when they send this thing off is like, they send like, they just like chuck a stuffed bird out the window and just. Something that dumb, when they're like, fly to Enzing. And they're like,
All the pros.
it happened, like it worked, and then the game was like. But the thing I can't tell is like, if Fendus brings the final, like, I don't know, like whatever Gargana, Cinema's got the letters, we have to figure out what Gargana contributes, some sort of weapon or something. And then, is there still time to hang out with Fendus before he's like, oh, by the way, I brought the final thing we need, I'm going to act to the end.
I think we have to hang out.
Yeah, okay.
Well, because we're waiting for the response, right? Because once you send it off, you have to wait for the third thing. You have to wait for the result.
Oh, that's nice. So when he comes in, they put it together, they send it off.
And then
They chuck the bird out the window. And we go, and then they're like, oh great. And then they hang out. And then the game ends. That's fun.
Fendus from another realm did something called texting. That
You know, it is common when you have nerd night, everybody picks up the phone, they put it in a stack, and they
They get rid of it.
put a tablecloth over it, it's not there, 2 hours later. You know, your wife knows my number, if your kid has an accident or something in the house, you call, don't touch the baby.
That's a fun way for us to enter the rooms, like sort of.
Put
our
phones
phones.
down.
This is like working at a
Yeah.
Everybody put your phone in the basket.
Hopefully that'll also be, like, then we won't have to make this feature turn off your phone, so the audience
Oh,
will
okay.
see us, like,
We just
Oh,
like
We
everybody.
just collect the audience.
Yeah, we
And that's what they're
Very small
solving. They're solving
cellular
to get their
devices.
phones back.
Get your phone back.
We locked them and killed them.
Lol, just take the phone basket and just putting it in every puzzle.
What if we pull out the tablecloth and their phones are
seems rather complicated, or maybe it's not, but like what is the game architecture? How does this game, it seems like we have to figure that out, of how the Melton Born LARP works.
Yeah, and I think we do, I mean, even though whatever's, I mean, we do have to have some type of or way to communicate.
Well, you hearing it the very first time, I'm really curious, like, what your thoughts are. Aside from how good it is, we know it's brilliant and we love it. But that, given that, like, what things are like, this is really going somewhere, keep this, here's what's missing and what you could work on, or I like wished for, is there anything, like, yeah.
It would be interesting if there were a core component, a mechanic that consists of, some kind of basic resource management that is consistent with your themes, whether it's feathers, because you talk about ornithology and birds, and the birds are the carriers of this hideous bird flu, that's going to wipe out the entire species of Yitzides. If there were talons, bird eyeballs, animals to represent bird eyeballs, or all the above, right? One person's got a feather, another's got a talon, one's got a beak.
What do you mean resource management?
So in every game you've got, whether it's tokens, playing cards with a certain number of points per card, right? This is an ace, this is a 10, this is a 2. There's always going to be some kind of resource management in a game where risk and challenge are in any way associated with exchange of resources with other people, right? One of your resources might be completely implied. That's where the bluff comes in, poker, right? You don't actually know what the other person's resources are. You're managing what you've got, a pair, versus what they seem to think they have. That's a lot of money. No, I think it's a bluff, right? So your resource in a way is confidence, right? You're spending it or demonstrating you're using it. But you can't bluff every round, or else eventually people will pick up your pattern. So you have to decide when you do it. So some resources are real, like cards. Some are interpreted or inferred or implied. And in some cases, like Monopoly, they're on display because everybody can see who owns what property and who's got the highest stack of bills, right? And who's got no money and no property. So it's very public. There's no display of that in poker, right? Because it's all hidden until you demonstrate it again.
Yeah.
So what is the resource management in this game? How is it that these players are able to duel, right? What is it
What's
that they're
the risk
using?
and what is the consequence?
And you can't have that without a resource that can be expended, and it has to be finite and in a situation where you're being observed. Now, as participants, everybody understands the rules. It doesn't matter how arcane and complicated they are, because the players are the only audience members. But when you're performing a game for an audience,
Exactly.
you want it as stripped down as possible. There's actually a really cool series called Tabletop. You guys know who Will Wheaton is? So yeah, this guy used to be on Star Trek. He was a kid. Now he's he's a middle-aged dude. He's a very popular blogger. He has a series on YouTube where he will play games with his friends. And he records it and puts it on the internet for people to watch. And some games are going to be more fun than others because the more complicated the game, the more time to spend discussing the minutia, the less fun it is for a spectator.
Yeah.
But the more streamlined the rules and the more intuitive they are, even if they're familiar to an extent, right? Even if it's like rock, paper, scissors, where you understand before the person shows what they've got in their hand, you understand the mechanic that both people have something in their hand, red meets yellow, yellow meets blue, blue meets red, and then they reveal their marbles, and that's how you resolve combat, right? So it's a psych game where you're trying to psych out the other person. Okay, she did blue last time, but we blue this time. No, she'll see that coming, right? The audience can pick up on something like that really quickly because it's familiar, even if it's slightly foreign because the mechanics are different from rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
So if it's something that's intuitive, fun to watch, and not something that's going to require them to interpret. Because the thing about hit points is, while it's very common to the grognard scene, grognards being, we're going to rock on that real fast.
Yes, I'm going.
But there's a vibe, there's a scene. On the other hand, if you just want to entertain by creating wacky rule systems that are like Calvin Ball, in that they're so abstruse, right? Then the audience is like, all right, I'm unable to follow this, but I'm getting what's going on between them because they're also narrating the effect. The road turns into a snake.
Right.
Then that's totally incidental. So it could be either so arcane that it's beyond interpretation, it's just something to observe, and they're like, wow, it's like Hogwarts, right? It's like crazy. Can't follow this. Like Quidditch. I've seen every goddamn movie that's here something like that. They're like around 6, right? Okay. And so
What happens if they don't catch the snitch?
I got nothing. Yeah.
So our little battle in there was so arcane, like because we said what was happening, it
You
wasn't
narrated
hard to
it, it
follow,
wasn't
it was
that bad,
narrated,
right? Yeah.
it was easy to stay with.
So long as there's some kind of mechanic, that also for people who do follow that sort of thing, It's like when you're watching TV and they do something you know a lot about. Law and Order, CSI. Those do video game TV shows. I've been working with video games 14 years. You know, they're just like, well, let's upload the server to the Matrix. I'm like, shut the hell. Who wrote this? You know, this is Daniel's dad. You know, it's just like, computer son. You know, you get that script. This is garbage, right? It doesn't have anything to do with reality. By the same token, you don't necessarily want this to be inconsistent internally, right? You want somebody who watches it, you know, to be able to say, well, that's not consistent. So it can't be so arbitrary that it feels inconsistent to your audience members.
Well, what kind of source makes sense to you? Like bird feet?
Honestly, you know,
We use scales. We talk about scales becoming patterns. We talk so much about birds, I wonder if it's scales.
yeah. I mean, anything bird related would be a neat recurring motif just because you've got the recurring feed and it would sort of tie it all together and it would create cohesion. But that's
I mean,
That's cute.
are you saying, maybe, are you suggesting like instead of hit point, like if they have a battle and go to Pentacle, instead of hit points, they maybe are, or maybe a consequence is an exchange of
Right, so like how he
resources
gets his health restored is that he has to give over,
to you, like,
or to the game master, how many ever of his resource
Maybe.
to not die.
Okay.
Or you've won all of his, whatever they are, and then when you give them back to, or through him, you give them back.
But yes.
I do think something that kind of happens here, and totally, anybody kind of correct me if I'm wrong, but it does seem like we're kind of running into, or we're doing kind of a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
Like we kind of have these moments where it gets quiet, and then I just say we have to do something else.
Yeah.
Then we have moments where we're rolling for something and dealing with hit points, but then we also have moments that are more kind of based in like, but I'm just kind of throwing magic, and we're, you know, so I think, maybe kind of simplifying that to kind of one or two kind of things that we see happen at least more than once, that lays out like, okay, well then that's this kind of forward battle, that's how this is kind of determined here.
Yeah, if we're all moving in a direction to solve a problem or to accomplish something, and so,
And it's
Then
nice,
you don't
like
have
they're about to do in
Yeah,
in 5 little teams or 6 little teams.
Right. But I like the Calvin ball of it, that like, that we have this thing we're solving for where we're each contributing like a parasite or a thing, but then we're also in a game. Like I like the open world of it, that it gets like Heath noises and then he says something. I think that's part of what we're doing is trying to make it fun for the audience so that we have these dances or songs.
I feel like it's hard to care about Calvin Ball because I'm just like,
You don't know what's happening.
yeah, it's
But
all
I don't-
made up, right?
I guess Calvin Ball said, like, I feel like we can't just, I don't think we want to just drag scene. I think we wanted things like Disney Rooster and Metaphor game back in there.
Right, so how
Yeah,
can we
yeah.
have both? Like how can we, instead of it feeling so random and not driving anywhere at all, and then contriving an end to get us out of it, like how can we get ourselves to that end, which I kind of think we have talked of like a decent way to get ourselves, but keep the theater stuff, like keep the dance.
I need to
the
pee
song.
really bad, but I don't want to miss anything.
Okay,
I'll
break.
wait for it. So
Great,
that's-
yes.
Let's take a little break.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take 15.
Don't forget it. 'cause I-
Take a what?
A break.
Did he say?
15.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, well, I just think, it's never wrong, right?
There's so little emphasis.
Stuff happened and I was too far.
Yeah.
That's kind
And you are kind of, I think how the scene is, if you're like the spine a little bit, you're a little bit of like a hard ass, like the rest of us are like, I don't know, I'm like Brad, you're like doing your weird romance and things, and he's like, and you're kind of like, guys, come on, I don't know. Seems a bit like you're the like, keep it together, which makes sense for when you're like, shut up.
So that does happen in games where you will have one person who is always pushing the group. Usually that's the game master, but not always. Sometimes you've got a player who's just really into playing the game and gets his friend or her friend to be the GM and tells that person, all right, let's do things. Go, come on, Steve, put the phone down. Like, let's play, guys, come on.
Yeah.
And so you're constantly, unless you get lucky, like, and you settle into the group of people who are all equally into it. But it's like any other social activity. And you got one person who's really into racquetball.
I mean, I would think everybody would be equally into it, or then we fall back into that trap of like, why are we watching people not have fun working?
But
Like
fatigue-
why are we, like, watching them successfully play, like, I'm still hanging on to that a little bit, like, watching them kind of successfully do something together. but then there's this like the actual game produces conflict, and you're not sure if it's like personal or real or whatever.
Yeah.
But then it can be, you know, talked about in an act, in table a little bit, as like that day was truly our day.
Yeah. I like the, if you win a battle, up the other characters voting. It's really fun. So, and it also takes, all these things take away the arbitrariness. Like, we right now got such a powerful GM, and it takes away from, like, cause it takes away the thing where he's just like hit or miss, and then you don't see why. Like, it's fun to make an invisible mechanism that determines how it goes.
Now, earlier, just back to the question had come up about deciding when to shift gears from a scene about conversation to a scene with an activity of some kind, or a scene of conflict. What we do often in games is scene framing, and it's not unlike the scene framing in the text. In the sense that someone or something has to articulate when a scene begins or ends, and then we shift. And typically, believe it or not, what I see at the table is just, okay, scene. And literally, that's what people will do. That's verbatim what people will do at the table. Like, for example, if you're playing something like Archipelago or Fiasco, or one of those games where you just have a series of scenes building up towards the great conflict or climax, it'll be my turn, right? So my turn begins when this person says, all right, scene. And then I say, okay, I'm going to do this scene. We're going to be in the men's room. You know, you've got the briefcase. So you're in the scene with the briefcase. You know, I've got the 45. He's in the stall, perched on the toilet seat, eavesdropping. But he's going to make a noise halfway through. That's really funny. And then get drawn into the scene, or just throw the door open and walk out. You know, startle us, right? Okay, go. And then we go.
How long do you go for?
And then typically, so you don't want to be rude, you don't want to like hog up the entire game session, so your scene is, you know, 5 to 10 minutes. It's like a scene in a movie, right? It's huge, 10 minutes, 2 to 5 minutes, you know, and you just go until you hit the moment. And the moment, of course, is when you decide, do I get what I want? I've got 45, she's got a briefcase. We don't know whose side he's on, but I want that briefcase. The scene ends when we find out, do I get what I want? It's like a scene in a novel or a scene in a TV show where the main character's question is addressed, one way or the other, the scene is over. And if I get what I want, it should be disastrous, right? It should always lead to a more complicated situation. I get the briefcase, it's empty, there's a tracking device. Somebody now wants it from me. Somebody tells me, yes, you've got it, if you want to keep it, this is what you're going to do, right? So even when you get what you want, the power is taken from you in some way. And if you don't get what you want, it only makes you hungry to try again with a more drastic approach next time. So escalation is pretty much consistent throughout the entire series of scenes. So we find out later, but now in Fiasco, people vote. In Fiasco, there's a moment, and you can choose what you want to do, but there's a moment where you're like, all right, you know, so am I going to get it? Everybody holds up a white die or a black die, you know, and then how does it work? Somebody gives me a die. One person gives me the die, and then at the end of the game, the number of black dice and white dice, you roll them, and then you know, if you get a higher black number, it means this kind of outcome, a higher white number means that kind of outcome. And they're both equally horrible. It's not like black is evil and white is evil. They're both, like, they're just both completely fucked. You know, like, well, it's called Fiasco. Nobody gets away. It's like a throwing position. But anyhow, that mechanic for driving each scene forward results in an equitable distribution of spotlight. Because sometimes you play with shy people or people who are scene chewers, and so you have that way of passing of passing the spotlight around in a circle so that everybody gets to be a supporting player until the spotlight hits them, and then they remain on stage, and then back to support role.
That's really great. And we sort of had, like, so you were saying we sort of had, like, when he says Gargana's turn, the thing we were just missing was Gargana saying, okay, my objective would be to make love to Fennis. Like, a reason. And then the scene plays out for 5. Like, if we were to do, like, follow that really strictly, we would end up with, like, 3 or 4 scenes in our 20 minutes.
And it could be really neat to see the players as themselves, because clearly they won't employ the accents and they won't speak in character. And then somebody would say, "Good, think of what you do." All right, yeah, okay, no, that's cool. I mean, let's do it. Okay, you know, that's sort of my doing. You know, well, you're going to be in the room, you're going to be getting away. Okay. And then see, you know, somebody's like, all right, go. Whoever's turn it is, like, all right, let's do it.
And so does the person whose turn it is determine what their objective is, or is that determined by some other source?
A lot of the time, people who aren't sure what they want their character to do in the scene will be like, oh, what do you guys think? You know, and literally everybody sort of brainstorms, well, it seems like, you know, for the past 2 weeks, you've kind of been pushing this agenda. It'd be cool if you just completely abandoned it for reasons we can't figure out, and then we learn that it's this. Or, you know, maybe you get what you want. It's really bad. Okay, let's go with that. I want to do that. You know, I want to win. I want to win a fight against it, and then everybody turns on me. You know? Or have the fight against it, and then everybody turns on me.
Something I wonder with this scene we're building is like, so if there is this escalating, like let's say the escalation is toward the 6 of them, including Fentis, or the 5 of them getting together a destructor package that will kill him. Like as that escalates, like each person contributes or doesn't, and then they have to start, and now we all contribute. If that's like the thing that's escalating until they can finally send it off, how to allow for inside, in between like escalation scenes, allow for things like a song or things like a dance, like things that don't drive forward but are just essentially a delight or like a treat.
One thing you might do is sort of approach it with the understanding that you're going to have scenes that are climactic at the end of your session, right? So everybody knows when you play Monopoly, you know, you don't put a hotel on the boardwalk, right? Because you have to get there first, right? Mechanically, you have to make your way around the entire board. By the same token, your game could be structured in the same way in that you can't have a quote major climactic scene until you've had an entire go-round around the table. Right? I mean, in Fiasco, you can't have the tilt scene until you've gone on the table twice. Like, those are just the rules. Created in such a way to facilitate more character development, you know. So you might actually have somebody specifically saying, in the course of the game, when it's their turn to be in the spotlight, hey, how many rounds before we have to do the spell sequence? And somebody else is like, oh, don't worry, it's like 15 minutes. We got time for a bunch of other stuff. All right, I want to do like a social scene. You know, maybe let's do a flashback. 3 months ago, when we first started doing this, you know. Great, all right, where are we? You remember how like, you know, blah, 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 like after this big wedding. Yeah, let's do that. So you guys have a flashback sequence and you have a lot of fun, or you know, maybe it's just like, all right, let's just have a sequence where our characters are just going to, you know, get drunk and party before they do this horrible genocidal thing, you know, and they're just kind of, right?
Are we talking about the red wedding?
If you said, like, if one of your characters was just like, yeah, before you do the red wedding bullshit, you know, but that's how broads talk. That's how workers prefer to, you know, they would say before the you know, the whole genocide thing. And then, yeah, I mean, have it you know, go off without a hitch, and then suddenly your character's like, oh, you know what? Why didn't we talk about this? You know, she's half insane. Or whatever.
One of the things that's really interesting as you talk about is that it sounds like you're not playing to win. You're playing to create a beautiful story.
Yeah.
Which also ties in with the Musser, the ornithologist text, because it's not about competition, it's not about winning, it's about did you create a beautiful story along the way. So that's how these songs and dances fit in, it seems like, is that, you need the crazy, you need them riding in the helicopter listening to that new side of Valkyries before they drop them off. So.
Right, yeah, it is uncommon to game with people who are interested in it. I don't actually know very many people that I would even play with who've had that mentality, just because it runs contrary to the goal of the experience, which is to experience it. To follow the rules, certainly, because these govern the interaction, and the interaction itself is the prize, not the end goal. Whereas with Monopoly, it's typically a drive to defeat someone. It's a zero-sum game. It's not about creating an experience. It's about dominating the resource management elements with games. You want to keep your character alive if that's fun, but sometimes, I mean, I've had plenty of game experiences where the death is more fun than the play. You know? Because the death scenes can be so, I mean, I had one character with multiple personality disorder. He was launched into the air by this hideous form of telekinesis. And this chopper getting ready to land, and of course he's heading for it face first, and he panics, and his personality is sublimated. Another one comes out and is so confused because he's plummeting out of the sky with helicopter's blades, and he just has enough time to ask, what has happened? And then, you know, has no idea what is, and it was the most spectacular death. It was a years ago. I still remember it was just great. It was a perfect job. So it's definitely more about the experience than winning or losing through resource management.
Maybe everyone's okay with Christie, but we're like, let's make an awesome deck for you. But Dennis is like, no. And we're all like, what could you do? Like, this is the best awesome deck you have.
That is appropriate. I mean, that's definitely gamer game.
Yeah.
How did you end up falling, like telekinesis, falling, help, chakra? Like, is all that stuff determined by external sources, roll of
Yeah.
die, or is that stuff that you
Classic
choose?
mistake. The character was trying to get into this bank vault, and this game stalker, the planet's been visited by aliens, and every place they land is completely obliterated by accident. It's based on this novel called Roadside Cake, where the idea is like when you're a person, you set out a picnic blanket, you have food, and then you leave behind like a beer bottle or some crumbs, and the ants find it. They don't understand. They just see crumbs, they see beer bottles. They don't understand pollution can be dangerous. They don't understand crumbs signify they just know food when they see it, and they're unaware of your existence as a kid, right? By the same token, these aliens don't even understand humanity. They just come here to spoil parts of our planet and leave when they got the resources. Not even aware of humans, right? So we find artifacts which are completely toxic to and the military just quarantines the entire area and just cuts it off. But you're playing this sort of adventurer who tries to sneak into these military bases and grab the artifacts. Maybe you lose a hand, maybe you get radiation sickness, maybe you manage to smuggle it out and make $1 million. Like, that's what you do. You're just one of these guys. So I go in, and there's this huge gravity warp, and inside this bank I can hear a loud banging noise. And it's coming from all the furniture inside because of this gravity warp that's blasting stuff up and down, up and down, up and down repeatedly until it's pounded everything with smithereens. And we managed to completely cover the top of this bank with dynamite. We blow the roof off, and everything flies up into the air. And we've got just sacks and duffel bags of money, and we find a lot of it's still intact. Battered and smashed. There's safety deposit boxes full of jewelry. Most of it's powder, but still we got a bunch of loot, And then all of a sudden we see something invisible coming and just flattening the grass. And the guy, the game master, is explaining the grass is being flattened and browning and withering in seconds as this huge invisible force is moving towards it. And I panic and I run into the bank, which is still experiencing that monstrous gravity flux, but without the benefit of a roof. So it flees me straight over the air. And he just describes my parabola as I soar through the air towards the helicopter we were going to escape in, and its blades are still spinning, and my character blanks out, and I describe how the alternate personality kicks in just before it hit the blades. And that was him of Pinky. That was his death scene. And so all of these elements have been described to me. It was just my terrible idea and my character's panic. And rather than think about it and try to come up with a successful solution, I came up with the first idea that popped into my head and decided he would probably panic and make the suboptimal choice, which he did. And I didn't even think about the gravity until the DM said, well, that gravity thing, just stop because you can't move the roof. You're flying up in the air. So that was his death. And it's not unlike, what I suggested earlier about the idea that there's some forgotten detail that, because it's often how you get caught, right? You get caught up in the drama. The game master is above the drama in a sense, playing chess with all these human lives.
So how does he interject though? So like he's giving you the scenario that the roof has been blown off and you have a choice, and then you guys play the scene, and then how does he tell you that you're screwed?
So typically in a tabletop game, not a LARP, but in this case a tabletop game, all external forces are narrated by a game master who answers all of your questions and then explains all consequences. That's the understanding, is that like you say, okay, I'm going to place TNT on the roof and I'm going to climb off. He says, you can't because, or, okay, fine, when you hit the ground, you hear this, or never you do something, but you are subjected to a new stimulus of some kind, or the consequence of your actions. Now, well, all right, I'm going to run like crazy. All right, which way are you going? Where's the nearest building? There's a barn about 50 yards away. I'm not going to get there. I'm going to go inside the building. I'm running inside the bank, right? And in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to get inside the bank. I'm going to get up to the second floor and look out a window and see what happens when does it come inside or not. I completely forgot about the fact that the roof wasn't there and the gravity well was still bouncing up and down. At which point he reminds me of saying, okay, the second you set foot in the bank, this is what happens to you. How do you respond? Well, there's not much you can do when you're flying through the air, so my other personality comes in because it was the only way I could respond. It wasn't as though I had any devices on my person. I mean, if I'd had a grappling hook and a rope, I might have thrown it into the building to try to hang on for dear life or anything. But there was literally nothing on my equipment list that I could use in a creative way. There was no option, so death was the only answer.
Right.
Insta-kill. Yeah.
What happens after that? I mean,
So immediately, because we had a cast of other characters, for
Yeah.
example, when you take these devices back to Earth, or back to the real world, you sell them to a fence, you know, who has bodyguards, maybe I take over the character of bodyguard, fences, and I
Okay.
become involved in the scenario a different way.
Okay.
Yeah.
But then also born all deaths are permanent.
Right, right, I get that. I'm just curious in a sense, like, because I haven't experienced this since I played D&D when I was younger, and I don't really remember, you know, like, do you just sit there and wait for people to finish the session?
Very rare to do that. I mean, I know people who do, but I've never actually done it. In a game like Fiasco, it's neat because your main character can die at any time. But then we go around the table and when it's my turn again, maybe I say, all right, flashback, a year ago. You're all so happy, and you're alive too, you know? All right, let's go back. This is like, you know, the best day of our
Oh,
lives.
that's pretty cool.
And then you go to the next scene, which is the two people who were, you know, so in love at the time, one's torturing the other for information. Where is the briefcase? And so then it creates a really fascinating drama when it's your turn because you can do that, or you can just say, all right, in this scene, actually, let's do this in the prison. I'm going to be the warden this time. You know, this completely minor character we introduced last go around. I'm going to be the warden. Let's go back to the prison. You're still in cell block D. You're still in the, you know, interrogation room, and you're still the police officer. I'm going to be the warden. We're having a conversation, you know, and then you wander into the scene, and then go. So it's not necessarily the end of the scenario if your character dies if you've got all these other minor characters around.
Okay. Sorry about that. Maybe seems interesting.
He's a good guy.
Okay, now what? You were saying, like, so we're here till, like we have to do a sort of a performing thing on the 7th. So we're here through the 6th. You were saying something about, you know, about games going on, or we could just get together and do a play one or something like that?
You know what, I was thinking, so, the guy who designed Fiasco lives in Durham. In his spare time, he is often hired by corporations to design LARPs, in addition to the stuff that he does on his own time, which, you know, I mean, they're quite famous. The guy's one of the ones. I mean, he's definitely more of a game designer than I am.
Like team building kind of things, covered in that?
Kaiser Permanente, for example, hired him to do a bunch of stuff. And I think he works at like UNC hospital, or hospital system, I forget what he does, but he's designed LARPs for nurses and IT personnel, so that each can sort of experience the other's point of view. Right? Nurses understand how the tech people create what they do, and then tech people sort of understand how software is used in the field, and it helps them to bridge these gaps, right?
Right.
So he's used it for what you call serious games, but at the same time, he designed The Climb, which is the one about these mountain climbers. He's currently working on a tabletop game called The Night Witches. I don't know if you know who those are, but like World War II, you know, this all-female squadron of pilots called The Night Witches. And they were insane because they take all the armor off their planes so they can fly higher. Well, of course, they're basically inside these big wooden frames with propellers. They're just suicidal, but they were amazing, dangerous. So he's designing a game about them. He's a really great game designer. And he's as nice as pie. He's a really nice guy. So I was thinking maybe, moving forward, he would be somebody to talk to about LARP specifically and probably just come here and facilitate a LARP for you guys because he's designed so many and played so many, far more than I have, and I think that would be kind of cool.
Yeah.
That being said, if you just want to play some of the stuff that I'm already familiar with, I'd be happy to come here and facilitate as well. Let me know what you think. Basically, I'm at your disposal, and he's pretty chill dude.
Have a little bit of a sense of what
It takes a lot to explain what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
so it might be best to keep on.
Okay, well, I'm right now kind of, I mean, the only thing I got is a day job, you know, working for this video game company. But other than that, my weekend is pretty much wide open, and the rest of this week and next week too. So, other than picking up the dude and my little dude at school and picking up the wife from work, I don't have any obligations, nothing that would prevent me from coming here and running something for you guys.
So awesome. We have evening sessions and we have the weekends booked. I mean, so whatever's best, I think, for your life, we can just set a session.
Yeah, the only other, like, time that's taken up is Monday morning.
Okay.
So,
I don't
pretty
need to
much,
get up until 10.
yeah,
you know.
that's the ornithologist's calendar for the distance.
So, yeah,
Cool.
so you get to pick, you
Okay.
just boss us.
Well, I don't remember, what I'm doing this weekend. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's nothing, but maybe the wife is like, no, we're gonna see X-Men. So let me double check, but in all
Okay.
likelihood, I'm thinking maybe Saturday?
Okay,
Is that
great.
weekends are not even
Perfect.
maybe for you guys?
No.
That'd be great.
Okay. So I will find, will all of us be there then?
Mm-hmm.
So 8-player art? Yes?
Perfect.
You as well?
Sure.
Will you get in?
Yeah, okay. So,
Oh, boy.
an 8-player LARP that would, sort of, and maybe that.
Zach and Chuck, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Do you guys wanna LARP?
I'll LARP.
Sure.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And I think
That's
like
fine, that's perfect.
something that has like, I think a game master and mechanisms and stuff would be useful. I mean, I really like what you were, like, there's the two, like, there's the forgotten detail,
And also there's the, no, I don't want to roll dice, I'm not in that kind of game, I'm in the, like that, I've lost that. Like those two things are really juicy and good for us. I don't really know how that informs what kind of game we play or anything, but.
And whatever we play will be informative, but, yeah.
I don't think I actually just said anything that amounted to
No,
You go with that.
The other thing that might be interesting would be to, in the same way that a movie trailer gives you the gist of what it's about, to set up individual scenes from different games to let you get a feel for it without playing through the entire 2-hour experience. So,
That's a great idea.
I have one game that I've developed called Pandemonio, and the concept is that you are a suicidal, gun-toting exorcist who travels from city to city in like a blood-covered van. You find people who are possessed, and you do whatever has to be done, and then you leave. But invariably, because demons are addicted to vice and sin, or, by the same token, delighted in corrupting innocence and virtue, no matter where you go, it's inevitable that the demon has taken over the body of somebody who is, in serious debt, to a loan shark, and there, this is going to be a bloodbath, just getting the person out of their house because, or a bank robber, who's, or a member of a terrorist cell, or worse, a member of the NSA, but whatever the case, it's not going to be an easy in and out, Linda Blair, spinhead, vomit the green goo. No, it's going to be far more dangerous than that. So it's an extremely violent game. But what's interesting, at least I think, as a designer, is that if you fail, the person on your left narrates what happens, and if you succeed, the person on your right narrates.
Oh,
So,
that's fun.
yeah, you say what you're going to do, you demonstrate your intention, then the dice tell you the response in a very binary way, success or failure, but it's the people at the table with you who tell, and not the game master who's telling you the mechanics are. The people who are with you are going to tell you whether you succeed or fail. The other thing that makes it kind of interesting is that the more you succeed by using black magic, by killing people who have to be killed, the more decay you incur. And of course, decay causes you to deform and become violent, and eventually you become cannibalistic. So essentially, either you fail or you succeed and become the thing that you hate the most and have to die. So it's kind of a fun game. And it's, basically, you have to put down your own people. So inevitably, sessions of Pandemonio are very short-lived because, of course, nobody gets out alive. But it is controlled by a GM. Dice are a heavy feature, and yet at the same time, I wanted it to be very cinematic and narrative-driven, so there's a lot of elements for you to sort of control what the dice do, or make decisions about what kind of dice you want to roll. So it's not as rigid as, say, Dungeons & Dragons. You definitely have a lot more creative control.
Okay.
And then we can try ViewStream 4-player around the table without the screens and just see how that flows. I think it can actually be pretty interesting. But that is completely diceless and GM-less, but it would give you more of a feel of what, in my mind, is an ideal run situation because it's purely about decision making. So it's either do something like that, but at the same time, because some of these games accommodate 3 to 5 players, you would invariably wind up with an audience, which would actually be pretty useful from both sides of the screen.
View screen's the one where I have problems, but I can't solve them. I have to talk about it.
I have a copy of it in my car. Do you guys want me to get it? Because I don't know how to get out of the building, so I want somebody to show me what I'm going to see.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and then you guys can just pass it around and whatever. And then you can get a digital version. I can email it to whoever, just email it to you guys. So it's in the PDF file. Okay. So, tentative, I'll let you know. Yeah, Saturday, what time do you guys, like 6-ish? 7-ish?
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever.
Anytime.
Right.
And is it, would it be?
I mean, really, like, check with
Whenever,
your
Saturday.
family and, you
Uh,
know,
yeah.
if it's the afternoon, that's cool, if it's the night, that's cool.
Yeah, why is it control of like human real world like situations? Like literally, I'll just be like, hey, do I like this? It should be like, no. So yeah, but I'm pretty sure I'm going on Saturday at 7. So would it be here? Okay. So it's table for that.
I suppose we could do it at the, Lecter House if we wanted.
Yeah,
Where's that?
maybe we should do that. It's like a 10, 15-minute walk from here.
Okay, great. And
Yeah, we have the dining room
Yeah, we have a big
table.
long table.
that's true.
And,
Kind of a haunted
I mean, I
mansion.
don't know, either way is fine.
Either way,
I don't know if that's better or not, I just.
do y'all have an opinion?
Do y'all have an opinion whether we better do it here or
Not really. I mean, if you want to be comfortable, if you want to feel more, homey,
Uh-huh.
Packer House is
Right.
great.
Yeah.
If not,
Like snacks and stuff.
But you think better in a house than in a, or
We
like
definitely feel more like a LARP in the sense that most of the LARPs I've done have been in.
House.
Yes.
Oh,
So would I park like?
No, you park at the house.
There's a little,
Yeah.
yeah, it's an actual house.
Okay.
I'll get you the address, Raphael, or I'll email it to you.
That'd be fantastic.
thank you.
Yay, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, thank you.
Good meeting, man.
Yeah, really.
So I will, need somebody to show me where my car is.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I have no idea where you're going. We don't know.
Oh, no, these are some dudes I know in Philadelphia.